The term passkey is becoming more relevant. With companies starting to support passkeys to replace passwords, you probably have a ton of questions. I answered a lot of those questions in my last passkey video, so today let's focus on the difference between syncable passkeys and hardware-bound passkeys. Why should you choose one over the other, and is one of these choices best for everyone, or does it depend? So to review, passkeys are a new term for FIDO2 credential-based authentication. They are built to replace passwords, and they use public key cryptography to secure your accounts. Instead of a website asking you to input a password to log in, you will authenticate via a passkey, which you can think of as a special key that resides inside of a physical device like your smartphone or on a hardware security key. On a phone, you will have to use biometrics or another unlocking mechanism to allow the login to happen, and that passkey is not sent to the website. The website only looks for an OK from your device to log in. It will never actually see the passkey, and neither do you, because it's a private key that resides in your device. That means that attacks like brute forcing and phishing would not work, since proximity is a requirement for a passkey, and you aren't memorizing anything that could potentially be given away to an attacker. There's nothing to type in, so nobody could steal a plain text password from you. Now, of course, there are still caveats and things that you have to consider, and I have outlined all of those in my previous video, and I will be delving more into the pros and cons in another video in this series. There are several physical devices that can actually be used to log in with passkeys. For example, newer smartphones can be set up as a device that stores your syncable passkey. But smartphones are not the only devices for passkey authentication. As mentioned earlier, hardware security keys can be used for passkey authentication. In fact, some devices, like the YubiKey, have supported passkeys, FIDO2 credentials, since 2018. So if you are already a YubiKey user, you have already been using passkeys and you probably didn't even know it. This is because passkeys can be implemented as a hardware-bound credential, or they can be synced to an encrypted cloud for usage across devices. Now, if you stopped here and you were like, wait, what did she say? Pause this video, watch my video explaining passkeys that I posted a couple of weeks ago, and then come back. Yubico is sponsoring this passkey educational series of videos, which gives me this wonderful opportunity to show you how passkeys can work and why you should still be using hardware security keys for multi-factor and passwordless authentication. Even though syncable passkeys are a new thing, few websites have implemented them so far. That means that your best bet to protect your online accounts is still going to be multi-factor authentication, and as we all know, FIDO-based hardware security keys are still the best option because they are phishing resistant. Since YubiKeys already support passkeys, that means that you could use one physical hardware key for your passkeys and as your FIDO2 U2F authenticator, meaning that you could still use the key for two-factor authentication wherever passkeys are not implemented yet, and where hardware keys for 2FA are compatible. So you could potentially just use one key for all of your most vulnerable and sensitive sites, like your email, social media accounts, password managers, and operating system or workspace accounts, whether they use 2FA or passkeys. We are so lucky because Yubico is hooking y'all up with a coupon code too. Use the coupon code Shannon Morse, that's all one word, for $5 off any YubiKey 5 series hardware key, and get a head start on passkeys for the next generation of security. Also, it is important to note, it is best practice, I have mentioned this so many times, to have at least two keys, one as your primary and one as a backup. So, one major question I have seen floating around the web is this: do passkeys make hardware keys obsolete? That's easy. No, they absolutely do not. Remember, YubiKeys have supported passkeys already for some time. If you compare the two ways that you can set up a passkey, you could either set them up on a hardware key like a YubiKey, or you can set them up via software, so your passkeys get synced to a cloud backup, and then you have to also secure that cloud backup as well. Depending on if this is for yourself or for employees across an organization, realizing the threat model is so important. One may work better than the other, or you may choose to use a hardware option for some accounts while just using a software-bound key for other accounts, and that's totally acceptable. applicable because everybody's lifestyles are going to be different. So one use case is not going to work for everybody. So the question is not really, do passkeys make hardware keys obsolete, but who should be using a passkey on a smartphone and who should be using one on a YubiKey? And that answer totally comes down to you and your own threat analysis, convenience, and if this is for personal or business purposes, which may require a higher level of assurance. Now, I have mentioned the term threat analysis before, but this basically just means that you evaluate the degree of threat that you have to your systems, all your different systems. Take, for example, somebody working at a bank. I used to work at a bank. They probably need to have a higher threat analysis because a hacker might target an employee of that bank and try and steal login credentials. My threat analysis is high now because people try to hack into my social media accounts every single day. I'm not even kidding. It's every day. I see all of the emails from people trying to break into my accounts, and it never works because I have 2FA turned on. And those accounts are a part of my job as a content creator, so I consider them to be highly targeted and very sensitive. You should consider what kind of information you have access to, and if that is data that somebody could use for malicious purposes. If your answer to that is, ooh, yeah, I might be a target, then you may want to consider strengthening your login security with a security key. Then we have convenience. How convenient do you want your logins to be? If you think using a different password for every single website you visit is not convenient enough, well, hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. Please start using a different password for every single website that you use and use a password manager so you don't forget them. I've done lots of videos on password managers, but also passkeys will make this a lot easier for you because each website will generate its own unique passkey on your device once it's available. So there won't be anything for you to remember, and each and every site will have its own unique login. Meanwhile, MFA or multi-factor authentication will continue to be extremely important. And I personally find that YubiKeys are so much more convenient than using codes on my phone because I just tap the key to log in, and there's no 6-digit code for me to type in, assuming that a site is using the correct protocols. I also think that a YubiKey will be more convenient for me because I review a lot of phones for my YouTube channel, and creating passkeys on each and every single phone when I switch them, that might be very annoying. Coming up on my channel, I'm going to break down the pros and cons of passkeys in more detail, and I will walk you through setting up passkeys in several different ways. So please leave your questions below in the comment section. If you like this video and you want to see more of these upcoming videos about passkeys, a subscribe would mean a lot to me. I use subscriptions as an indicator that I am actively building an audience here who is interested in these kind of topics, and it lets me know that you find value in this kind of content. Thank you so much again to Yubico for sponsoring this video. I'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.